All right, welcome everyone. We'll get started in a minute. I just don't see one of our speakers yet in the panel here. So maybe we'll give it another minute or two as people trickle in. But in the meantime, I can just start by introducing myself. My name is Leila Belfi, and I am the project manager for one of the GWF projects called IMPC in short, or Integrated Modeling Program for Canada. We have 6 back-to-back 10-minute presentations, so we do have a pretty full 45-minute time slot here for the session. But first of all, I do want to, before getting into the presentations, I do want to acknowledge the lands that I'm speaking from. I'm speaking from Burnaby in British Columbia, the traditional territory of the Huncamino and the Squamish territory. I do want to invite everyone to take a moment to acknowledge the land where you speak and work, or you're speaking from or working from. I'm gonna, I think, maybe start with the first presenter here, and then hopefully we have Roy join us as well in the meantime. So Elizabetha, Lika, you'll be presenting on, I have you here on the agenda to present on estimating the economic value of improving the ecological condition of the Saskatchewan River Delta ecosystem. So I'll hand it over to you just so we can use up all the time for question and answer and presentation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will jump right into it. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Elizabetha Lika, and I will be presenting my research, which aims to determine if Canadians are willing to pay for the improvement of the ecological condition of the Saskatchewan River Delta and put an economic value to the non-use values derived by its ecosystem services. As such, this study addresses 2 fundamental questions. We sought to estimate how much Canadians are willing to pay for different levels of restoration of the Delta, and understand if their preferences differ across provinces, age, range, income levels, and other socioeconomic characteristics. Just quickly, a bit of background on the Saskatchewan River Delta. It is a unique ecosystem with an undeniable ecological significance. It covers an area of about 1 million hectares. It's one of the largest freshwater deltas in North America, twice as large as Prince Edward Island. It's recognized as an internationally important waterfowl breeding area. It's home to species at risk, including the lake sturgeon, and these are only a few of its environmental roles, among other economic and environmental roles, also important to the local community. Unfortunately, the Delta faces many direct threats which have disrupted its entire ecosystem, and these threats are caused mainly by human interventions occurring upstream in the Saskatchewan River Basin. These impacts have potential consequences for the Delta's health, hydrology, biological diversity, and just to name a few, decline in the number of waterfowl population, in the number of muskrat abundance, or changes to the timing of seasonal and daily water flows in the Delta are just a few of these upstream threats. In order to answer our research questions, we designed, tested, and implemented a stated preference survey, which was administered to a representative sample of the Canadian population. For the purpose of the study, 965 responses submitted online by respondents were used, and respondents were asked to answer a series of trade-off questions regarding potential future scenarios where people would pay more taxes to contribute to Delta restoration. So each respondent was presented with 6 choice sets, which differed in terms of the levels of the attributes for each of the alternatives presented. The attributes selected for the choice sets were lake sturgeon, waterfowl population, muskrat abundance, habitat and healthy ecological condition, and a rigorous process including literature review, researchers' judgments, and consultation with other experts in the field was used to select these attributes. So the status quo alternative, or leave as is, for example, is the one that is interpreted as what outcomes are expected to happen over the next 20 years if no new Delta conservation project occurs, and wouldn't increase the cost to the household. And then alternatives A and an alternative B show the expected outcomes over the next 20 years under two of the many potential future scenarios that do more and cost more to conserve the delta. You can see only one example of the choice set, and you see that the alternatives differ in terms of the levels of the attributes. So for example, for the waterfowl population, some of the levels included were 15% of the conservation target of 800,000 waterfowl population, or 25%, 85%, and similarly for the lake sturgeon, we have 10%, 35%, 60%, and 100% of the conservation target of 10,000 lake sturgeon. Muskrat abundance target, the levels differed in the range of 5 to 70% of the 20 possible muskrat found per hectare, and the habitat and health ecological condition levels across the alternatives differed between 30 to 85% of 900,000 hectares possible. The results of our survey and of our study, they suggest that Canadians are willing to pay for the improvement of the delta ecological condition. Benefits may be small per person, but they are substantial when aggregated over all Canadians, and respondents indicate that they are willing to pay between $1.55 for a 1% level of improvement of the ecological indicators, up to $2.53 for a 1% improvement in the level of all these ecological indicators. Results indicate that not everyone desires restoration equally. So for example, being employed, having a higher income level, having a higher education level, being a male and falling in the age range of 45 years old and above, and living in provinces other than the prairies is associated with a higher willingness to pay for the improvement of the delta ecological condition. And in addition to these marginal welfare measures, we calculated the aggregate ones, and Canadians are willing to pay an annual cost for 20 years, varying from $118 per household per year up to $441 per household per year. And this amount, they differ in between different levels of the restoration of the delta, from a low improvement scenario up to an ambitious improvement scenario, which consists of the highest restoration level possible for all the ecological attributes that we presented in the survey. This study, it aims to assist in the proper identification of the critical delta ecosystem services, as well as to promote restoration actions to assist the policy decision-making in terms of the trade-offs that regarding various management options for the delta ecosystem, and also given the limited empirical evidence estimating the non-use values associated with restoring any river delta in Canada, including the Saskatchewan River Delta, this study aims to also add to the body of the literature and the body of knowledge. And these were briefly the results and the steps followed for my research.
Thanks so much, Elizabetha. We have here a couple minutes. You actually ended early, so we have a couple minutes for questions if there are questions from the audience. And it is a small group, so feel free to unmute and directly pose your question out there. All right, so hearing no questions, I will actually introduce a postdoc student of Dr. Roy Brower, who just informed me in the chat that the student will be presenting on behalf of Roy. Hi, Yuchun. I hope I don't mispronounce your name here. Am I pronouncing it right? Is it Yuchun Huang?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that there. But yeah, there was a little bit of confusion here. I didn't have your name on the agenda, so thank you so much for being accommodating. But yeah, I will invite you to present and share your screen and introduce yourself.
Sure. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Hey, hello. Today, sorry about that. Today, I'm going to introduce a discrete choice experiment we conducted in order to reveal the willingness to pay for water quality improvement in the Great Lakes. This paper is co-authored with Dr. Roy Brower at University of Waterloo, Dr. Diane Dupont at Brock University, and Dr. Ruth Pinto at University of Waterloo. First, I would like to introduce the motivation of this study. As the world's largest surface freshwater ecosystem and one of the most ecologically diverse ecosystems on Earth, the Laurentian Great Lakes system has great economic, environmental, and cultural importance. The impact of human activities on the quality of the Great Lakes has long been a concern. The deterioration of the quality affects human welfare. Means of retaining and improving the quality of the lakes have been innovated and be carried out on an ongoing basis. All means incur costs. To measure if the means are worth the cost, we need to have a knowledge about the value of improving the lake's quality. This knowledge on the US side has been well documented in the literature. However, to the best of our knowledge, on the Canada side, the relevant research is limited. We therefore conducted this discrete choice experiment to fill this gap. Our target is to obtain the knowledge about the preference for water quality improvement and the concrete value for it. We are also interested in whether the results are transferable between the US and Canada and over the 2 consecutive years of interest. The method we apply is discrete choice experiment. In the experiment, we first conducted a survey to collect data and then performed the data analysis. We conducted a survey in 2019 and 2020. The respondents of the survey are from the region of Great Lakes on both Canada and the US sides. In 2019, there are around 1,100 respondents in Canada and 1,600 in the US. In 2020, there are around 680 in Canada and 560 in the US. Besides some socio-economic questions, the respondents were presented with 6 cards showing the current water quality situation and possible improvements at specific prices for the Great Lakes. According to a water quality ladder that classifies the water quality from poor to very good into boatable, fishable, swimmable, and drinkable, the current status of the Great Lakes is that Lake Superior is swimmable, Lake Huron is fishable, and other 3 lakes are only boatable. The survey cards were designed to have 3 versions. Version 1 has 6 alternatives. Other than the status quo option, which is shown on the left, the other 5 alternatives each offers an important improvement on a specific lake at a specific price. Version 2 has 3 alternatives. 2 possible options other than the status quo provide different combinations of quality improvements on the 5 lakes at different prices. Version 3 has version 3 has 2 alternatives, which are the status quo and a combination of improvements on all the 5 lakes at a specific price. The respondents are randomly and evenly split into 3 groups. Each group received one of the 3 versions. The data are analyzed by using a discrete choice model. Considering the possible heterogeneity across individuals, we applied a mixed logic model. Here is the specification of the model. The attributes of alternatives and some socio-demographic variables enter the model. The attributes include possible levels of water quality improvement and the price of improvement. The socio-demographic variables are income, distance to the nearest lake, and the perception of the current water qualities. R is the software we use for the estimation. More specifically, we use Apollo package in R. Here are some main results about the willingness to pay. It shows that the willingness to pay to improve from the current quality situation to target quality levels. In most lakes, when the baseline level keeps constant, the higher the target level, the more the willingness to pay. From the table, we also observe that the willingness to pay for improving water quality in Lake Ontario is higher in Canada than in US. For Lakes Erie and Michigan, the US residents are willing to pay more compared to the Canadian residents. In 2020, the willingness to pay substantially decreased compared to in 2019 for most possible improvements. We also did a weight-Louvier test to inspect if the true model parameters for the two countries and for the 2 years are statistically the same. The test rejects the hypothesis that the true parameters are the same between the two countries and over 2 years. Therefore, the estimation results are not transferable between them. One possible reason for the non-transferability over the 2 years might be that due to the pandemic that started in early 2020, people shifted their attention to issues other than the lake water quality. It would impose a significant effect on the results. Another phenomenon we can observe from the table is that there is a reverse relationship between the willingness to pay and the current lake quality situation. The better the current water quality, the less people are willing to pay for further improving the quality one more level. This is in accordance with the principle of diminishing marginal utility. To conclude, it is stopped. I don't know why.
The share screen did stop.
Yeah, I don't know why. Let me share it. Sorry about it.
Good, no worries.
Can you see the conclusion now? Yeah. To conclude, we conducted a discrete choice experiment to study the willingness to pay for water quality improvements in the Great Lakes. The main findings from the data analysis provide information about the value of improving water quality in the Great Lakes. This type of information for Canada is limited in the literature. We attempt to make a contribution to the literature by filling this gap. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Yichun. We do have 2 minutes left, so if there are any questions, please feel free to unmute and pose them directly to you. All right, seems like we don't have a question from the audience, but I actually have a question. It was really interesting what you mentioned about how the pandemic year actually did make a difference because people's attention was diverted away from water quality. Did I understand that right? Mm-hmm. And you said that could affect results. I'm wondering, do you happen to know how they could affect the results? In what way?
Yeah, I think we don't even know how much, and even this is really the reason which affected the result. But this is just I guess we need to study more to find out if this is really a factor that affects the result. And if this is one result, this is one effect, there might be other effects, like you might already notice that the sample size for the 2020 is much less than the sample size for 2019. So that is also maybe another reason, but we need to further study to find out why.
Thank you for that answer. And I have one comment here that I just want to read out loud from Andrea. She says she loves the classification system that explains the differences between drinkable, swimmable, fishable, and boatable, so that she says that it makes it very tangible. She wishes there was more public education that encourages people to get behind the actions needed to make these improvements too.
Thank you.
All right, okay, so thank you so much, Ichun. I'm gonna introduce the next speaker now. Leila Ayman is going to talk about hydroeconomic models for informing water management decisions. Are we using the right modeling tools? Leila, you're up.
Thank you. So let me just first quickly share my screen. And okay, so hello everyone. My name is Leila Ayman, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Global Institute for Water Security, University of Saskatchewan. And today I'm going to talk about choosing hydroeconomic modeling approaches to inform water management decisions. So let's start with a little bit of background about the case study, which is the Saskatchewan River Basin here. The Saskatchewan River Basin is a large multi-jurisdictional river basin encompassing 3 Canadian prairie provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and has been facing different water management challenges. For example, the water shortages in upstream Alberta that prevents water authorities from issuing new water licenses in some sub-basins of the South Saskatchewan River Basin in that province. Or in downstream, as we also heard from the first presenter today, the Saskatchewan River Delta has been facing several water quality and water quantity issues, mostly felt by the Indigenous communities living there. And still there is need for more development in some other parts of the river basin that demands more water from this river system, like irrigation expansion in the province of Saskatchewan. To deal with all these and to allocate water resources among different users more efficiently, we first need to understand the potential consequences of our water allocation and management decisions from different perspectives. And of course, one of these perspectives is an economic perspective. So we develop hydroeconomic tools to help us understand not only the economic consequences of our water management decisions, but also the economic impacts of external drivers such as climate change or socioeconomic developments. The common practice in water management studies to evaluate the economic impacts is basically an engineering-based approach that accounts only for direct water using sectors and estimates the amount of sectoral production under different water availability conditions, and then multiply that by an average market price. While this can be a helpful approach when we're dealing with water, river basins where only one directly water using sector dominates the economy, this may not be as effective in multi-sectoral and multi-regional river basins. So if you take a simple hypothetical river basin as an example that consists of 2 regions with several economic sectors, and imagine that one of these sectors is a direct water user, meaning that it receives water directly from the river system and produces output that is used by different users, including other sectors in the river basin. Then imagine that for some reason the amount of water that is supplied to this sector is reduced. So the economic impact of this change won't remain within that sector. It propagates through the purchases of other sectors from the output of this first sector, not only in the same region, but also in other parts of the river basin. So you can see under such circumstances, only accounting for direct water using sectors hardly help us understand the real magnitude of economic impacts, and especially the impact on the entire economy. This can be even more pronounced in cases such as the Saskatchewan River Basin, where the direct water using sectors are responsible only for almost 30% of the provincial economy. And in such cases, even if we have all required data to include all these direct water using sectors in our engineering-based economic impact assessment models, we still may neglect the remaining 70% of the economy. Now, to put this into perspective, we developed two hydroeconomic models for the Saskatchewan River Basin. The first model follows the common practice as I just explained. So it is, we call it an engineering-based model. It consists of a water resources system component, which is a node link simulation model developed in ModSim-DSS. This model captures water resource operations at a local scale, accounting for reservoirs, diversions, return flows, and so on. It also accounts for water allocation priorities based on the water licensing system that is in place in the river basin, and it covers the entire river basin. This component is coupled with an economic component, which is an engineering-based economic impact assessment model. It includes direct water using sectors, here irrigation only, because we didn't have enough information and data to include other direct water users at the time of this study. It estimates crop yield under different water availability conditions, and then multiply that amount by an average market price and market price minus cost. The other model is an integrated hydroeconomic model in which the water resources component is exactly the same as the one in the engineering-based model, but the economic component is different. So here we have a macroeconomic model developed based on economic input-output tables, and we call it interregional supply-side input-output model, or in short, ISIO model. This model includes not only direct water users, but also indirect water using sectors. It captures intersectoral and interregional connectivity through economic trade flows, and it relates water supply to economic production. So the model generates results at both sub-basin and provincial scales. Now, to show the performance of these two models in evaluating economic impacts under a hypothetical scenario, for example. Here we take a real example, which as an application example, which is the irrigation expansion in the province of Saskatchewan. So the government of Saskatchewan announced in 2020 an irrigation expansion project that will irrigate 460,000 acres of irrigable lands in the province from Lake Diefenbaker. So we use the two models to estimate the economic impact of this irrigation expansion on different sectors and different parts of the river basin. Now, here are some results. First from sectoral perspective, changes in sectoral output in the entire river basin as a result of this irrigation expansion are shown here. Results from the integrated model are in blue, and from engineering-based model in orange. And as explained earlier, the engineering-based model can only assess and can be seen here, can only assess the economic impacts on direct water users, whereas the integrated model can estimate the economic impact on direct water using sectors as well as indirect water using sectors. And this is important in the case of river basins such as the Saskatchewan River Basin, where we have influential indirect water using sectors. As you may remember, almost 70% of the economy is generated by this part of the economic sectors. At a special scale, on the right, you can see that engineering-based model estimates the economic impacts on in only region where the irrigation expansion happens, actually. Whereas on the left, the integrated model estimates the economic impacts for every single parts of the river basin and shows the distribution of economic impacts across different parts of the river basin. So the sectoral and special distribution of economic impacts helps us understand the relative importance of these impacts, and is especially critical in cases when we are dealing with multi-sectoral, multi-regional systems, where making a decision in one part of the system may affect the other parts and the entire economy at the same time. So to wrap up, I should say that the choice of hydroeconomic model basically depends on the question that we are trying to answer, like any other modeling exercise, and then the characteristics of the case study. So if we are interested in estimating only the direct economic impacts in a region where only one direct water using sector dominates the economy, then engineering-based model can be helpful. But if you are dealing with a more complicated situation where multi-sectoral, regional river basins are involved, we need a model that should capture both direct water users and indirect water users and the economic interconnections among them, so that we can see the economic impact as well as the distribution and relative importance of these impacts across different sectors and regions. If you're interested in learning more about this study, you can refer to our paper in environmental modeling and software, or you can always reach out to myself for more discussion or any question or comment related to this. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Leila. I love the animation and the illustrative elements of your presentation. Always, it makes it very easy to understand complicated modeling concepts there. Are there any? We have 1 minute here for questions. If there are any questions from the audience here, feel free to unmute. All right, well, hearing none, I can then introduce the next speaker, Nitin Singh. Will be talking to us about the human factor and seasonal stream flows across natural and managed watersheds for North America. Go ahead, Nitin.
Oh, thank you. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that I live and work in traditional territories of neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people. I hope I pronounced it correctly. I will share my screen. Oh, sorry. Can you see my screen? Okay. Thank you. So, the overarching goal of this work was actually to understand the role of human disturbance on stream flows across North America, and to understand what is driving the patterns across North America. So this work was featured in US Today in online print media. The link is below, and several other media outlets, international and global outlets. So before I begin, I want to start with the motivation of this work. And there has been an ongoing debate about how climate or human disturbance influences stream flow. Some papers say this paper in Science, it talks about how stream flows are influenced by climate change. There's another paper, this paper in Nature talks about how stream flows are influenced by human disturbance. This is all global modeling studies are talking about the attribution of stream flow in and across space. And the recent paper in PNS talking about how the stream flows change. So this paper is interesting because they took the stream flows from natural managed watersheds and compared how they changed across North America at annual time scale. And they did not find any influence of human disturbance across North America. So, but we know that all these studies, one thing is common is they all look at the annual time scale. So what we wanted to do is look at the same question, but at seasonal time scale, because we know that management interventions generally happen at seasonally, like reservoir operations. They do not necessarily happen across a year. So our questions were, first, what are the main trends? How the trends vary of seasonal stream flows across North America? And how do these trends vary between natural and managed watersheds? And what are the main drivers or controls of these trends across North America? So here I'm showing some results. This is the, I'm going to share, this is a trend analysis. The work was done for, of course, all 4 seasons, but here I'll start with just only 1 season. So we analyzed the stream flows for 2,000 watersheds, and the color you see is the gradient, is the percent change per year. Blue means increasing in time, red means declining. So blue is wetter and red is drier. This is the period is the bottom, it's a 60-year period. And what you see here is, just gonna take a picture. So what you see here is very obvious pattern. In central northeast, you see increasing, flows are increasing. On the west, you see flows are declining. And these trends are very pervasive in nature. So you can imagine that this is mostly driven by climate. We know the snowpacks are changing in west, so as the flows are declining. And again, this is not very new. We sort of know this based on regional studies. And so it was not very surprising what we noticed. And the patterns are very different as you move from one season to another. Then what we did, because we now understand the trends, we compared the trends between managed watersheds and nearby natural watersheds and compute our own alteration matrix. So here I'm showing you, this is a spatial pattern of alteration matrix we computed. By comparing the flows, you can see the trends in managed watersheds to nearby natural watersheds, and the colors are the same. Blue means increasing, red means declining. But what we found is you can see different shades of red and blue. So darker the shade means greater rate of change. That is derived from the alteration values we had. So yes, flows are declining in the west, but flows are declining at a much faster rate in the managed watersheds. And these managed watersheds are likely to experience drought in the future. Similarly, if you look at the Northeast and the central US, flows are increasing at a much faster rate in the managed watersheds compared to natural watersheds. And these watersheds are likely to experience flooding in the future. So two key message I have here is first, that you can see how the extent of influence of human disturbance on stream flows is highly variable in space. So I did not go in time, but it's also highly variable in time. And second, that the human interventions can actually amplify the effect of human disturbance on climate change on the stream flows. So then we looked at what is driving these patterns. We built a random forest model. So we have a random forest model for natural watersheds and managed watersheds. Here looking at different drivers, and this is the variable importance analysis. So we have these are most important variables, and this is the least important variables. So, and these are the ranks of the importance, as you can see from the legend, and the frequency of occurrences, how many times you ran the model and what rank you got. So for example, if your frequency of occurrence is 100, means you ran the model, however times you always got the same rank. So here I'm going to focus on the first four variables and just talk about what are the main drivers. So in the natural watersheds, we found that the climate was the main driver of the patterns. In the managed watersheds, you can see the impervious cover, storage of reservoirs, and the canals were the important drivers that drove the trends and stream flows across North America. And so the main message is that we have altered these watersheds to a point that the trends are now in these managed watersheds are mostly driven by a human disturbance. So to conclude, that human influences on flow are not constant in time. They're highly variable in space and time. The effect of climate change will be highly amplified in these managed watersheds because of the human disturbance. And lastly, we think about climate adaptation. We need to think about also some sort of intervention to mitigate the impact of human factors on flow regimes. That's all. I'll take questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nitin. Are there any questions from the audience here? All right, if there's no question from the audience, I have one.
Sure.
So could you go back to that slide where you did have some data visualized for future drought and future wetter periods for managed watersheds?
So this one or?
Yes, this one. So you mentioned that those red dots kind of showed the increased probability of droughts in those very managed watersheds. And I was just wondering here, what's the time scale you're looking at when you say in the future?
So this is kind of like implications of future. So if I give you examples, so we went back. So this work was done from 1960 to 2009. So future means it'd be happening right now. So I went back on these watersheds. Yeah, so I went back to some of these watersheds and checked, and they are actually having drought in the west. Of course, you know that by now. But we also checked many of the watersheds in central US where there's a flooding happening right now that we predicted from these models. So we did some ground truthing. So yeah, this is happening right now, actually. So now we don't have to go further future in time. It's actually happening right now.
Right. So that's just relative to status quo now, and the graduation and the colors just show relatively.
Yes.
Okay. And the other question I had, so managed watersheds, I just want to clarify here, in the States and in the States compared to Canada, it's the same definition of managed watersheds here with dams and reservoirs. So when you talk about human influences, what exactly are we talking about?
Good point. So just to be clear, so the database we used, it's a different, because in US it's pretty streamlined. We have a gauges 2 by USGS that defines what is managed and what is reference. So for them, it's like anything that has a human intervention, like dams, reservoirs, impervious cover, and wherever there's a diversion, canals, there's all managed watersheds. It's not very well defined in the Canada side. So what I did is whatever is not considered pristine, I assumed manage. So because they have defined pristine very well in Canada, but not the managed. So I assume whatever is not pristine is managed. So that's the definition I use from the Canada side.
Right, interesting. Well, that's really, that helps me understand a little bit the complexity of standardizing data as well when you talk about Canada versus the US.
Yeah, it's a difficult. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks so much. We are now right on time for our next speaker. So Puya Sabakruhi, he will be talking to us about 2D hydraulic modeling to examine water and sediment availability in an inland delta. Puya, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Puya Sabakruhi, and I'm here to present our recent work, which is like 2D hydraulic model to examine water and sediment availability in an inland delta. So as an outline, first I'm gonna start to talk about the study area and then the problems that we're facing in that particular study area and the objectives we have from our study. And then I'm gonna explain our new method of modeling for the delta. And at the end, I'm gonna present some results. So for the study area, we're studying Saskatchewan River Delta, and it is known to be largest inland freshwater delta in North America. And this delta is a home to many mammals, fish, and birds. And the water for this area, it's initiated from Rocky Mountains in Alberta, and it travels all along and passes through many dams in the province of Saskatchewan. And at the end, it ends in the delta and mainly in the Cumberland Lake, if I want to be specific about it. So here, this is a study area that we are currently modeling. So right now we're not modeling the entire delta, but you can see the area that we're modeling. And here's one of the few hydrologic stations that we have. And here we have the Cumberland House, and which is a place that I guess people around population of 1,000 lives here. And we have our Cumberland Lake here, which is the largest lake in the SRD. So the problems we're facing, they're mainly caused by the dams that was built. So these dams, as I mentioned, if I want to mention as E.B. Campbell Dam and Gardner Dam, they had many advantages for the province, but people here probably face some problems with that. And if I'm going to mention like E.B. Campbell Dam, so the problems that we're facing, it's like the flow patterns is greatly affected by these dams, and it's not following its natural way that it used to follow before construction of these dams. Also, it is reported that the water quality is reduced, And also they are facing some problems regarding the sediment. And also one of the main problems that we're looking for a solution for that is the reduction in the size and the depth of Cumberland Lake compared to the time the dams were not built. So the main objectives we're following here, the first one and the most important one is like integrating place-based knowledge with visualization tools and scenario-based approach. So basically what we want to do, we want to involve the indigenous people over there to share the ideas, and we also use their knowledge on our methods. And we also gonna do model scenarios based on community member statements. And also we will look for flow required to flow the old channel there, because currently it doesn't have the water all the time. And also we're gonna look for placing a weir to see if we can increase the depths in the Cumberland Lake or no. So the modeling approach that we're gonna use a HECRAS model. This model was developed by US Army Corps of Engineers. It's a hydraulic model. It's capable of doing hydraulic modeling, water quality modeling, sediment transport. It can be 1D or 2D. So basically, we're looking to do a 2D modeling because it's gonna give us advantage of we're gonna be able to visualize and animate our results. And the main important, before this, people were trying to do 1D models for here, but because Delta is a pretty flat area, you cannot model it with cross sections. You can see here, this is a 1D HECRAS approach. So you need cross sections, but if you want to try to do such a thing on a delta, you're going to need cross section like 4 or 5 kilometers, and the results it's not going to be good. So basically, here's like a screenshot of the depth simulation of the model. You can see it simulates the water depths all along the delta. Here I have shear stress simulation. It's going to be useful for the sediment transport. It is mentioned that at the first 50 to 60 kilometers, they are seeing erosion. So we can see here, we have more red spot. So it leads to more erosion. So we have more erosion here. And so now I want to show some results. So our model is, I can say, almost calibrated. You can see here, this is the hydraulic station that I mentioned on the map. And you can see the depth simulation looks pretty good for our calibration. So as I mentioned, we're looking to placement of a weir and to see the effect on that. So here is a location of proposed weir by the community. So I modeled placing a weir here and see the effect on the Cumberland Lake depths. So here you can see, this is the results of my simulation. And we observed that placing a weir can increase the water depths in the lake. I can say approximately 15 to 20 centimeters. Our next job gonna be to look to put weir probably in some other locations that they proposed. And here I have a small video to just show how the model visualize the results. As you can see, it shows that how the water enters the systems and we can also do this on the DM file or even on the Google Maps. This is for the water depths. And we can track water depths at any specific location on the model. And like this. Also, we can see the flow velocity. and also the shear stress, as I mentioned. And this was my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Priya. We might have a couple seconds for a very quick question if someone has one. All right, hearing none, I do want to introduce Casey right away, because I know you said you have a very full 10-minute presentation here, and we're at the last presentation time slot. So please go ahead, Casey.
All right, thank you. Hopefully you can see my screen and hear me okay. I'll just dive right in. So hello everyone, my name is Casey Clunas. I am a policy analyst at the Canadian Centre for Climate Services within Environment and Climate Change Canada. I just want to start out by saying that I'm grateful to be speaking to you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, today known as Ottawa. So this talk will be slightly different than some of the other talks today. It's not research, but rather information and data that will hopefully be of use to those of you who are undertaking research. So I'll be speaking about the CCCS, the Canadian Centre for Climate Services, our products and services with specific focus on where you can find and access climate data. So we all know that Canada's climate is changing, resulting in significant risks and impacts to our communities, economies, ecosystems, infrastructure, food systems, health, and more. Many Canadians and systems are already vulnerable to these risks and impacts and will continue to be into the future. So in order to prepare for this, we need to adapt. And in order to adapt, we need reliable climate information and data. So the CCCS provides Canadians with information and support to consider climate change in their decisions. And we do this through a number of different ways. So by increasing awareness and access to climate data and information is a key way. And we do this through things like our website and the suite of data portals that we support. And I'll be speaking further to this in some of the next slides. We also provide training and guidance on using climate data through things like our support desk and our training team. And we also engage with users to understand their varying needs and develop new products by collaborating with those users and experts. So today I'd like to focus on how the CCCS increases access to various climate data and information by focusing on some of the portals that we support. So the CCCS supports the development of and funding of a suite of climate data portals, which vary in complexity and are geared towards different levels and understanding and needs. You might recognize some of these. I'll be focusing on the two in the red box there on the right, but I do want to touch on the others before I do that. So the first is the Climate Atlas of Canada, which was developed by the Prairie Climate Centre. It's a really great resource to start learning about climate change, getting the big picture on trends and learn about how it may impact the region that you live or work in. And it takes kind of a mapping, storytelling, narrative approach to conveying information. The second one there is the Climate Viewer, and this is made available through the CCCS website specifically. So this one provides access to Environment and Climate Change Canada's main climate data sets through an interactive map. And the CCCS website and the viewer also includes a climate data extraction tool. So any of the data that you visualize on the viewer, you can also download for your own analysis. And then we have climatedata.ca and Power Analytics and Visualization for Climate Science, otherwise known as PAVIX. And I'm going to focus on these two a bit more in the next few slides. So climatedata.ca is a resource for intermediate to advanced users of climate information looking for higher resolution climate data or that wish to explore climate data in more detail and undertake some of their own analysis. So it allows users to download or display location-specific high-resolution data to adjust and compare climate variables, timescales, and emission scenarios. It also includes customized tools, sector-tailored information, and a learning zone. So climatedata.ca offers the ability to find local climate data summaries, including maps and graphs for a number of temperature and precipitation indices, as well as some other variables. So location-specific graphs, such as the one that you can see on the screen now, can be customizable for your needs and are available for download. So for example, you can adjust the timescale, which you can kind of see on the bottom here. It's a little bit small. You can remove any emission scenarios that you don't necessarily want to see. So those are represented by these colored bars here. So depending on your needs, you can take them out as you need. And you can also download these in different file formats. And so taking that a step further, the analysis page on climatedata.ca allows you to customize data for download depending on your specific needs. So this section allows you to select your locations, including by grid cells, as you can see represented in the picture on the screen. But you can also select by watershed, by health region, and more. You can also set your own thresholds for a variety of climate indices. So for example, if you're interested in days with precipitation over a certain threshold, such as 50 millimeters, you can put that in. You can also make choices about the emission scenarios and percentiles that you would like to use for your analysis. You can select your preferred output format and more. So once you've made your selections, the data will be processed for you and you're notified by email when it's available for you to go and download. So switching gears into PAVIX now, again, Power Analytics and Visualization for Climate Science. So this is a tool that's developed and maintained by Uranos, which is a climate services provider based in Quebec. It's an advanced tool for advanced users, such as researchers, academics, climate scientists, and the like. So it's a virtual laboratory which provides access to several data collections, as well as a Python programming environment to analyze that data without needing to download it. The platform aims to improve the quality and reproducibility of climate studies by centralizing the collection and management of the data. It helps to increase the quality and diversity of standardized climate outputs through open collaboration. And researchers who develop specific techniques are encouraged to add their methods to a shared library, making them accessible to all users. So PAVIX provides methods for finding and analyzing climate data, offering tools that span the range of climate data analysis steps, such as finding and accessing the data sets, climate indicator calculations, and data visualization. And it also offers a suite of tools to streamline the analysis of climate change's impacts on hydrology. So it relies on Raven, a hydrological modeling framework that lets hydrologists define custom hydrological models or emulate existing ones. So that's kind of climatedata.ca and PAVIX in a really, really small nutshell. I encourage you to check them out to learn a little bit more. And before I end, I did want to highlight just a few other resources. So the first is the Climate Services Support Desk. So this is a resource through the Canadian Centre for Climate Services. So the support desk is staffed by experts ready to help users understand and use climate information, whether it be to support adaptation decision-making or other climate data needs. So they provide that one-to-one interaction to better understand the context of each request and to help users really find exactly what they're looking for, whether it be the right data sets, information, or contacts. So they're able to help a range of users, whether it's beginners looking for general information on climate change, or if it's experts looking for specific data sets and how to use them. So if you have any questions about what I've spoken to today, or you look into some of these tools and questions pop up, I encourage you to reach out to them. They'll help you work through the questions. And if they are unable to answer, they do a really good job of connecting you with someone who can. So I'll provide you can see the email on the slide here, but I will provide the contact information on the last slide as well. And you can always access it through the CCCS website. And so finally, I just wanted to highlight something called the Map of Adaptation Actions. And so this is another tool supported by the CCCS. This one is a little bit different from the other data portals that I highlighted earlier, but it's an important tool nonetheless. So the map offers examples of climate change adaptation actions from across Canada from a wide range of sources, including conservation authorities, municipalities, businesses, and more. All of the examples are searchable depending on your specific interests or specific needs. So you can filter by things such as climate issue, if you're interested in flooding, by sector, if you're working in a specific sector, whatever it is that your specific needs are. And users can submit examples of their own to be developed for inclusion on the map. So if you have, or if you know of any good examples of climate change adaptation that kind of consider climate change information in the decision-making process, whatever that may look like, you can connect with us and get those examples included on the map. So I think that brings me to the last slide. So here's all the information for locating and connecting with the CCCS. Our website is up there. I encourage you to check it out. You can probably navigate to everything that I've spoken about from that site. So that's a really helpful resource. And then the support desk contact information is on the right-hand side there. So thanks for listening. If we have time for questions, great. If not, do feel free to reach out to the contact information on the screen.
Thank you so much, Casey. That was very helpful. I haven't heard about some of those sources up there, so it was really helpful to hear in detail. If there are any questions, we might have a few more seconds left before the break here. All right, seems like we don't have any questions, but as I said in the chat before too, feel free to reach out and let us know if you would like more information or if you'd like links to papers, etc., or some of the resources talked about in this session, and we'd be happy to reach out. Yeah, and then now we have a 30-minute break session right before the two high panels. I really hope everyone's able to join us for the two remaining panels before the conference comes to a close. So thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy your break, and we'll see you in the next panel session. Thanks, everyone. And thanks to all the panelists and the speakers as well.